The Court of Azathoth reviews Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft.
Today we're going to be reviewing H.P. Lovecraft's Dagon. It's a fantastic little short story. Really sets the tone for a lot of future writing too. So we'll be getting into that. It'll be good times, good fun today. Let's go ahead and jump into the news segment.
Did you have anything? Because I had a couple things.
I actually. Nothing like super recent, so why don't you go ahead?
So, I was not able to find anything about the At the Mountains of Madness movie. So, either it's very well hidden or I'm an idiot. But
it's possible that it's just a rumor too, and that I could be getting a little bit excited. But
yeah, I mean that's been in developmental hell for so long. There's always going to be people like, oh, it's actually happening, and then, well, no. Honestly, it probably will never happen. At least the way that it was intended to happen.
Yeah.
Which sucks. But hey, what you going to do? But yeah, if anyone has any news about that or any other movie adaptations, preferably not the shitty ones that we're going to have to review at some point, let us know. A couple other things. I was actually going to send this to you real quick. I saw it and I meant to tell you, and I found it way too good to pass up. But this is Scientists Discover Cthulhu's Sea Cucumber that Terrorized Oceans 430 million years ago.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that.
And I thought this was really funny because this old sea cucumber they discovered it's extinct. It's a fucking 100 million year old fossil at this point. They named after Cthulhu. So Cthulhu is now a scientific term.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. It was about time that about time Cthulhu got some love from some scientists somewhere.
It's proof that all scientists are nerds at heart. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
There was some dweeby guy who discovered this, and he was like, "Oh, I've got a great idea. It's Cthulhu." But yeah, I appreciate it. Pretty cool. The other thing, and I also sent this to you, and I've been meaning. I'm pretty sure I meant to get to this last time. It was just kind of. Look, it was our first show. Yeah. We didn't know what we were doing. But so there was kind of this TED Talk video put out, and not really a TED Talk in the most traditional sense, but a TED Ed animation education video about Lovecraft. And this video, I'm of two minds of it. First off, because I trust that you watch this. The artwork and animation is mind-blowing. It, like, seeing this, I know that sometimes I kind of, I was poo-pooing the idea of Lovecraft adaptations, and some of them I just don't think are going to work, like the last one we covered, The Tomb.
Yeah.
Which, unfortunately, they adapted, in quotes. Again, more on that in the weeks to come. But no, this made me yearn for some of these adaptations. At least, even in this format, would be awesome.
A Dagon film adaptation would be fantastic.
I'm pretty sure there are a couple, but I don't think they're very good.
No, one of them's really old. It's an old black and white kind of film, and it's yeah, the special effects are pretty cheesy, to say the least. It seems like
uh,
there's a more recent adaptation though, but I don't think I've seen the more recent one. I think the only one I've ever seen is the older one. And yeah, that one wasn't very good. It hasn't stood the test of time very well. But
I'm surprised that the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society hasn't adapted Dagon,
yeah, I kind of am too. They should.
because it'd be so much easier than what they anyway. Whatever. It's such an easy one. It seems strange that that company wouldn't. But seeing the animation here, it made me want to see other interpretations of of Lovecraft's work in kind of a more visual way. But
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, and I scoured the woman who made this video. I looked at her Twitter, so no one else has to. This woman is a raging social justice nut job. Just a warning. And
Hmm.
of course, the end of the video, we have to get the fucking lecture that
Hmm.
I bitched about last time and I didn't want to talk about again.
Yeah.
And it was even worse this time, because it was, hey, this guy was racist, but luckily we live in an amazing diverse world now. And they make sure to show all these caricatures. Oh, there's a woman in a hijab, there's a dude with a beard, there's a brown woman. Like, oh, well, now they can take on the stories, or they can have a voice or whatever. And it's like, oh my god, really? We're using this for politics? Really? Is nothing
Uh,
sacred?
nope.
Nothing is sacred. It's annoying. It's annoying. You're a fan of someone, you're a fan of someone's work, and every time that fucking person is mentioned, you get told, how fucking horrible he was. It's annoying after a while. It really is.
Yep. It sure
I'm
is.
over it. I said all I needed to say last time. I'm angry that after saying all that, I saw something that made me have to repeat myself. Oh man. But you're kind of you're looking at it now. What do you think about the animation in this video?
Yeah, I can see what you mean. There's a certain surrealism to it, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at there's this section where they're doing this their rendition of The Color Out of Space. It looks fucking amazing. I just love it. It's fantastic. I don't know. I never even considered the possibility of like an animated film adaptation, but
Uh,
honestly, it'd probably be more feasible.
there's a film adaptation of a lot of Edgar Allan Poe's work that won a bunch of awards. That team would do fantastic with a Lovecraft uh,
Huh.
animated film adaptation. I'll I can't remember the name of it, but I'll look it up later and send you the link.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
that sounds really cool. Yeah, no, for sure. I think that it's just a really cool medium to see it all expressed in.
yeah, no, I had to learn quite a bit about animation in school, and yeah, if I wasn't going into video games, I would definitely consider animation. Of course, most of it's outsourced these days.
Americans can't animate.
Well, traditional animation is really difficult to do, and it's really expensive, so they usually just outsource it to like South Korea, where they like run sweatshops of like animator sweatshops. I'm not joking either. Like I wish I was joking, but I'm not.
Oh no,
It's just
that is dead serious.
yeah, that's rough shit. There's a I don't know if you've ever seen the show Drawn Together on Comedy Central.
I've seen an episode here or there.
Well, it's a very very satirical work, obviously, and they go out of their way to be as offensive as possible. And they're very blunt about like the shots they take at people, and so they have a whole episode that's just dedicated to shitting on the animation industry. It's pretty great.
That's so meta, bro.
It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, all of this is, hopefully no sweatshops were involved. I don't think they were in this. But no, just all the frames. There's a bit here that's inspired by At the Mountains of Madness. There's their rendition of Yog-Sothoth that looks awesome. Like, I would love to see that in anything, really.
Yeah, me too. That'd be really neat.
It's just great, and I just like seeing all of this get any amount of publicity. But again, it really sucks that it has to come with a sermon because I'm good, really. I'm good.
I don't know if that can be. I wish it could be avoided, but I don't know that it can be. It's just something that's going to come up, and more than likely, we're going to have to do at least one podcast dedicated to this topic.
Oh god!
But we'll wait. Let's hold on to that one. Let's not do it until we once we have an audience, once we really have people that are listening and like asking questions and stuff, maybe then we can flesh out that just to get it out of the way and done with, and then we never have to talk about it again. That would be nice. And then that way we just like, if anybody brings it up, we could just be like, we could just refer to this episode.
Yeah, go listen to this.
Go listen to this. We fleshed the whole thing out there, and we're not talking about it anymore.
It's over.
Yeah.
The sad thing is, it will never be over. And your first answer was very accurate, and that's just kind of been the consequence, because Lovecraft was always like a niche thing, and it's only really in recent years that any kind of mainstream audience has cared.
Yeah, well, mostly when people might adapt his work to theirs, but you don't see a lot of like even people that rely heavily on Lovecraftian themes kind of keep it on the down low. It seems like they don't really declare openly like that they're taking Lovecraft. Like if they're asked about it, they'll say, "Yeah, sure," but like they don't like openly declare this. Like, it's weird to me. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, no, they often will, and it's kind of just a creator thing. They'll try to present themselves as like, "Oh, I'm a completely original auteur," and it's like, well, that's not even possible. But yeah, it does feel like there are a lot of writers like that who, but then again, there's a good number of them too who will be very vocal about it and have used their platforms to spread these stories or these narrative themes.
Yeah.
So
it's not just Lovecraft either. I mean, a lot of famous authors, like people like SJWs, are going to claim they're problematic. Like if you ask them about Tolkien, they're going to say he's sexist because he kind of was. And if I don't know, pick an author and they've got an issue with that author. No, it's just not something to really like dig into too deeply, I guess.
Yeah,
because no matter what, like I don't. There's not a single author that wasn't like that didn't have like some quote unquote problematic like tendencies or habits or just dispositions in general. So it's like there's no like none of them were like particularly great people, really. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's just I don't know. Everyone's got their. No one's perfect. It's my view. Is that no one's perfect. Everyone's got their flaws. There's no real point in digging too deep into that type of thing. But like I said, we'll probably end up having to just hash out that whole conversation.
Yeah. I'll leave it for now. It was just something. And the thing is, I don't go looking for this. I
No, of
want to
course not.
really
Nobody ever
express,
does, but it comes and finds you.
like I was sitting there completely unguarded, minding my own business, enjoying the video, and then I just get hit at the very end. Like I was about to be like, yeah, I was about to share it actually. I was going to be like, this is such a great video. And then I was like, ooh, maybe I'll wait on that. Maybe we'll hash it out on the podcast. Yeah, it's just it's annoying. It really is. And I'll leave it for now. I'm sure we'll talk about it again. We're doomed to. But
Yeah, I'll
yeah.
take a listen to it later too.
Did you that was all I had really, but did you were you able to think of anything else news-wise?
News wise, not particularly, at least not right at the moment. Things seem to be pretty quiet as far as the Lovecraftian stuff goes. I'm not seeing any like new video games or anything that are particularly Lovecraftian, at least not at the moment.
No. Not really.
I was just cruising through my Steam feed, and I don't know, The Witcher 3 is on sale, I think. That's not real.
In other
not
news,
really
on
related.
Steam, The Witcher
Yeah.
3 is on sale.
Yeah, it's $40 right now. It's not a bad deal.
Well, there you go. Get it while it's hot, kids.
Get it while it's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
there has been it's been pretty slow. Admittedly, though, I haven't been like I didn't look as thoroughly as I probably could have this week. I'll do a better job next week of gathering a bit more information.
Yeah, no,
as far as like the news segment goes.
That's totally fine. I think that we're going to get to what everyone's been waiting for, and that is our review of the much beloved Dagon. right, boys and girls, our story this week is, it's an obscure one. You've probably never heard of it. Honestly, it's called Dagon. Um, Never heard of this one. And I'm actually, I know that for sure this was one of the first ones I ever read. This was pretty early on, but I was not aware that this was one of the ones that it was in the batch of the first written stories. That's very interesting. And I like the way that we're doing this, as chronologically as we can, so we can see kind of the development of themes and Lovecraft's writing in what he's introducing these ideas. I'll be honest, a lot of things have kind of been added on to this story over the years. I'm really not going to get into any of that. I'm going with just what we get. What was known in 1917 and not what's known now. Because of course, a lot of the people who came on later who tried to contribute to the mythos tried to flesh this out, tried to connect this to other things, and that there may be some truth in that, but it doesn't really matter, honestly. Mm-hmm. I don't. At least I don't think.
There was a very good short story in one of the. I've got this. It's an audiobook, and it's a big collection of Lovecraftian tales from other authors, just more recent works. And we will go over some of these stories, 'cause some of them were really good. But my favorite was one that linked up to this story here. It's the first story in the book, and it's about this old lady, and she's getting old. She's like, her meds aren't really working for her anymore. She's kind of like on death's door a bit, and she's just paying attention to the news, and everything's kind of turning to shit, and the weather's starting to act all weird and funky, and like, as the story progresses, you start seeing like signs of like Dagon cultists like out in the streets and stuff, and you find out that like people are like becoming fish people and stuff, and like you can like hear Cthulhu's psychic call, and like Dagon's coming to rise out from the ocean, and it's a crazy little story.
Oh yeah, I'm once this is kind of a big chapter for us, is going over a lot of these original stories.
Yeah.
But after, because eventually, they run out, spoiler, there's not infinity. They'll run out sooner than later, and I'm totally down to get into a lot of those stories that were, that's a story that it seems to be very overtly inspired by all this.
Yeah. And very much so.
That's cool. But again, doesn't really factor into this one. So when I'm describing the creature and all that, I'm just going to kind of go with what we have here.
No, that's fine.
But at any point, Zach, if you want to jump in, if you have a note or if you have a comment, please do so, because I could use the help, honestly. But this is a relatively simple story, which is something I've heard people say against it, which I just don't understand. They don't all need to be the tomb, okay?
Right. No, I enjoyed it for what it was.
This is a very evocative story. This is like, this is a story that really paints an image in your head. And I think that's the mark of a good story, is if you're sitting there listening to the words and it just stands out to you. It's like a pop-up. Mm-hmm. But it's just words. But, they're so expressive in what they're describing that you really can't help but get sucked into what's happening.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But the story here, and I'll start it out, is we have a sea merchant. He's at sea, obviously. And this is during the First World War, the Great War. Yep. And his ship is captured by the Germans. Of course. Got to have a bad guy in there at some point. A human bad guy, rather. He's able to escape in a lifeboat, and he spends a few days in the middle of the vast empty ocean, and there is nothing in sight. And it seems like nothing's going to end, and he has no idea where he is. He all he can really deduce is that he is south of the equator.
Yeah.
But in terms of actual location, he has not a clue. One day, after falling asleep in the boat, he wakes up, and he finds that the boat is no longer in the ocean, and this is rather surprising. His boat is stuck in black, tarish, just a muck, and this seems like it's a very drastic change of scenery out of nowhere.
Very reminiscent to what Lovecraft considered the bottom of the ocean to probably look like, I think.
Yes,
and what he was getting at.
What's interesting is we never get a confirmation on that. That is what the character suspects. He suspects that it is a volcanic eruption under the sea has thrown all of this dirt and landmass up to him. But we don't know that for sure. And
we don't. It almost seems like he gets drawn into another reality altogether.
Yes. What's interesting is this might seem like a strange thing to harp on, but this will become another theme that we're going to see down the line.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is something that I think this story especially really establishes this trope for Lovecraft, that the sea itself seems to be like a gateway to other realities.
Yes, there's that, and even more specifically, land masses rising from the sea.
Yeah, from the sea just randomly, or without any real provocation, or even in unnatural ways. Yeah, Raleigh and all that good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people point to this story as a big, like almost a prototype Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that.
And it's up to listeners and readers to determine which story is more effective. Given the day, I might think this story is more effective. This story is shorter; it's more to the point. But again, it's been a while since I read Call of Cthulhu, and I'm sure we'll get there soon enough. Because that was fairly early on.
That was one of his earlier works too.
Yeah, which is surprising.
I can definitely see the link between the two here. It seems like in his head, as time went on, Lovecraft definitely was drawing connections between these creatures. His fascination and fear of the ocean really shows through in a lot of his writing. As has been stated before, the guy was extremely xenophobic about everything, and that was especially true of water, or big bodies of water. He was very afraid of them, which is really hard because he lived on the East Coast, and you're afraid of water. That's hard. That's difficult to deal with. I can't imagine what that would be like, just to live in that kind of perpetual fear of your own environment, anywhere outside your house or off your property is probably just so scary to you. But you can definitely see the theme surrounding the ocean and all of the vast unexplored depths that just obviously just had him completely enthralled. I think that combined with his obsession for the dead and stuff, it really starts to show through here. This is where a lot of that really starts, is with Dagon. So
absolutely, it's kind of an interesting combination of him seeing mystery in the sea and mystery in the stars, and they're almost portrayed as equally beyond man, which is very interesting considering that the sea is obviously on Earth. But during even now, we're 100 years on, and there's a lot about the sea that remains unknown.
Yep.
It's in terms of its most bottom depths.
Yeah, we
and that
know.
is scary to a lot of
Yeah,
people.
we know more about the depths of outer space than we do our own oceans. It's very difficult to explore underwater. It turns out, so we don't do it a lot.
It turns out that that seems to be the enduring fear.
Yeah,
Very, very, very interesting. And another thing that I found fascinating about the beginning of the story was there seemed to be no sense of danger when the merchant is at sea and he's just kind of in his boat. Like, they pretty much give you these details that, yeah, he has water and food and yeah, he's lost, but, and I think that this is what this is meant to do is once he comes upon this land that has just appeared under him out of nowhere, he doesn't feel relieved at all. Like most
yeah,
people who are stranded at sea would be like, land ho! But he's
yeah.
just like, he feels just sickened and
Mm-hmm.
disturbed, and there's dead fish everywhere and other dead things that he refuses to describe because they're so horrible.
Yep.
And I thought that was a really good way of going about it, because
Yeah,
there should be no relief when you come across this kind of land out of nowhere.
and this is another interesting thing too. It always seems like uh, whenever this type of thing happens in a Lovecraft story, uh, the water's the water that the protagonist is in is always very placid and calm. Like he doesn't notice that he's being dragged into this, and obviously it happened when he was asleep. But it seems like even if he had been awake, maybe he probably wouldn't have noticed right away what was going on. Even it's interesting to note that Lovecraft was really into gosh, he found there was, I guess, something poetic in his head about like how water would reflect like the sky, and how he kind of saw that as like opening a portal into other realities, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see, and obviously he doesn't go like too deep into it here. He really does leave it up to the reader's imagination as to what exactly happens to this guy, but um, he does flesh this out more in later books, I think, or in later short stories.
Yes.
This is a he's. I'm gonna have to do some research before I can talk on this more, because it seems like Lovecraft was very heavily influenced by a science fiction movement of some kind.
Oh
And I
yeah.
feel like I did a report about this a
At
long
least
time ago.
I mean, just even the scientific advancements of his time were a big influence on his work.
Yeah,
The discovery of Pluto is a good example,
yeah.
because that became Yuggoth, a planet in his universe.
Mm-hmm. Another example, or another excellent example, is the color from outer space, or whatever, the color from beyond,
The color out of space, yeah, yeah.
the color out of space. Yeah. Uh, I was listening to Overly Sarcastic Productions. They do a segment. They had a they did a Lovecraft video, and they did a segment on that particular short story. And what did she say? It was really funny. Something along the lines of this would be the story that you would expect Lovecraft to write if you told him that Newton discovered a wavelength of light that no one could see. So if you explain to him that like ultraviolet light is a thing, and that there are colors that we can't see, that he would just lose his shit. And this is the story he would write. So yeah, yeah, just it's pretty cool, kind of how he had his thumb on the scientific community at the time, and was just drawing so much inspiration from that. And you can see that too in his Migo, especially. They do a lot, which I'm not sure if he had a direct hand in them or not, but they draw a lot of like the obelisk stuff. That's all very Egyptian. I know that Egyptology was a big thing in the 1920s.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to plenty of his stories that directly deal with Egypt
Oh
itself.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's another thing
yeah,
that he was into for sure.
oh yeah. Well, a lot of people were back in his day. That was like something. If you were rich, you were into Egyptian stuff.
This
So they
is
didn't have any. They didn't have any laws against buying and selling like ancient Egyptian artifacts back then. So you used to see it all over the place in the United States. So it doesn't surprise me at all that Lovecraft was in that type of thing because that's right up his alley and during his time period. So
yeah, he definitely he draws a lot of, from the actual science of the time and the fiction of the time, and this is another story that
hmm
is set in contemporary times.
hmm
As far as I can tell, most of his stories are.
yeah,
There might be like one or two that aren't, and I'd have to check for sure, but that's another hallmark because it's almost become a gimmick at this point. Now
yeah,
when people try to do Lovecraftian fiction, they'll go back to the 1920s. Where
right,
when he was doing these stories, it was him writing a story set in modern times.
right. No, that was another thing I liked about that collection of more modern stories and books. Is they a lot of those stories they tried to write in a more modern setting. So I thought that was a little refreshing because usually you're right. Everybody just like they set their story like in the 1920s or work from there.
Yeah, which I
Um,
like, but it does get a
right.
little old after a
Yeah.
while. Like it's kind of like, okay, we could try this in another setting at some point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the steampunk aesthetic if you can get it to work out for you, but generally stuff that's based on like 1920s aesthetic is yeah. I mean, there's only so many places you can go with it, but no, I thought that was a. I forgot where I was going with this.
Yeah, we're all good. I'll continue along, I suppose.
Yeah.
So basically, he can't just walk off right away. He's got to
Right.
wait a few days for this mushy, horrible tar ground to dry out, so it's actually suitable for his weight and walking on it,
hmm
which is disgusting. But so basically, he just sits in the boat for a while. He thinks on it, and eventually he starts out, and it just seems to go on forever and ever. And he's walking. He has to stop at some point. He has to stop the night, and he notices that he's already been traveling all day, but before him the ground is slanting up.
hmm
There's a giant mound in front of him. So he stops the night, and he rests there, and he realizes that, it actually would have been easier if I was traveling at night because I don't
He
have.
starts, yeah. He
He,
starts treating it. He behaves like he's in the middle of a desert, which is really interesting to me. Whereas before he was in the middle of the ocean, now he's in the middle of a seeming desert almost, where it's easier for him to walk at night, get around at night than it is during the day. It's less intense. I
yeah,
can't remember how he describes the sun like specifically as like a black sun that like just reflects the land that he's on and
you know
just
what? You're right. He does say that, and that goes into what you were just saying about the heavens reflecting the ocean. That's kind of
Mhm.
a different take on that because this
Yeah.
is, that's in the sky, and this is something that some forbidden land that came out of the ocean supposedly that was never supposed to be seen by mankind,
Yeah.
or at least has been buried from mankind for a very long time, as we'll
hmm
find out. But so he becomes smart. He realizes that he can travel at night, and it would be easier for him. So he travels up this mound, and when he reaches the top, he's very lost for words because there is a giant pit on the other
Yep.
side, an immeasurable pit.
He
That
calls it a canyon almost. Yeah.
is just beyond description, and when he's making his way down, he can't help but notice that there's one thing that stands out, and it is a giant stone. And it's not just a stone in terms of nature, but the way he describes it, this is an obelisk that has seen the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures in terms of how it is carved and the carvings that he finds on it.
Yeah, finds a bunch he finds a bunch of hieroglyphics, likes of which he's never seen before, and is someone who was probably something of a hobbyist Egyptologist in his own right. Because the author or the narrator of the story, it sounds like is a pretty learned guy. He sounds like he's really smart. He doesn't really go into like what he was doing on the boat, or where just or what he was doing,
traveling with goods. But he does sound intelligent, and he says something like, basically, he knows that he's made some kind of discovery. He knows that this is not a traditional hieroglyphic obelisk.
Yeah. No, he's definitely it definitely sounds like he's an anthropologist of some kind, and that maybe that he was definitely like a scientist of some kind, and so this is like, to him, this is like incredible.
So did you want to describe just real quick what these hieroglyphics on the obelisk were?
So most of them, it seems seem to be some kind of sea creature. And there are some that he can recognize, like whales and squids and cephalopods of different kinds. But there are also things on the obelisk that he can't really, he doesn't really have a very good description for. Like, he seems to have a problem like really describing what they are, but they definitely look almost human, or maybe like they were human once. And there's some depictions of some really large depictions of these creatures like killing whales and stuff. And they're
described as some of them being almost as big as whales in the depiction.
Mm-hmm.
And as fate would have it, while he's looking at the stone and the hieroglyphics displaying these monstrous abominations, something happens to rise out of the water. That being what we're to take to be Dagon. I like the description, Polyphemus-like.
Yeah,
that's very clever.
Yeah,
and just basically this giant fish-like humanoid monster comes out of the water, and this is another thing that's going to become a theme. It approaches the obelisk, it kind of wraps its arms around it, and it starts making some very strange noises.
Yeah, almost like it's praying to it.
As far as I can tell, based on the description, I know that there's kind of fan art to the contrary, and I'm just going to call him Dagon, even though that's not even necessarily his name, but we'll just go with that. Dagon doesn't even look at our protagonist. He doesn't look at him. He doesn't look, but even so, this drives our protagonist crazy, and he starts running away. And I like the description. This is another story that very much deals with madness, as they all do. And at one point, he just kind of very nonchalantly says, "I think that's when I went insane." He doesn't even remember how he got back to the boat either. He says at some point he may have been dancing and singing for a bit on his way back, but he doesn't know. He doesn't remember really any of it. He doesn't remember the journey back at all. He doesn't remember any of the journey back, because then once he's in the boat, he doesn't remember. Suddenly he's uh, he's in a hospital in San Francisco. So something must have happened to this landmass, because remember, I mean, the boat was pretty far into it. So, either he carried the boat all the way to the nearest port of water without remembering it, or it just kind of receded away, or it's never happened. There's another theory that I heard.
Yeah, well, that's something he toys with at the end of the story. He's like, I don't know, maybe I am just making all this up. Maybe it is just in my head. He's like, all I know is at night I see the creature, and that's why he turns to
he starts using morphine.
Yeah, starts using morphine.
And he goes to like these anthropologists and such, and he's very interested in the Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god,
right?
Because it seems to bear a striking resemblance to the creature he happened to come across. That's another thing about this one.
In a way it does, because I actually know a little bit about the Philistine god Dagon, and he's actually pretty humanoid, pretty how do I say this? He was a god not just of fish, of like fishermen, but of like the harvest and stuff. So they would have prayed to him for like the rain and for good crop, not just good fishing. And he's actually probably one of like the 5 or 6 Babylonian gods that the god of the Bible is probably loosely based on. But there's probably not a lot more to him than that. He's actually fairly benevolent, from what I understand, in Philistine lore. But that being said, it's pretty obvious that Lovecraft's just taking the element that he's a fish god and rolling with it.
And within the fandom, it's just kind of been accepted that creature is called Dagon.
Right, and
it probably
even though that's just kind of like a name that it seems like the narrator of the story just sort of gives the creature. He doesn't really like and that's just not even really gives it, but more like hints at maybe these two are connected in some way, that they're not necessarily the same thing, but he thinks there seems to be a connection there, which does really well as far as like setting up Lovecraft's like his history with like cults and stuff, because obviously a lot of modern day cults like to turn and use old religious concepts.
Oh, sure.
And Dagon would definitely represent an old religious concepts. So yeah, it's just there's a lot of really fascinating implications in this story.
Yeah, and so basically, after he's talked with these anthropologists, I mean, obviously he doesn't push it, because he starts talking too much, they're gonna think he's crazy.
Yeah,
that seems.
Yeah, he's like they're pretty mundane. It's
kind of the doom of a lot of Lovecraft's protagonists. They can't go get help from anyone because no one would ever believe them. That's just kind of what happens. Yeah. At the end, he is very seriously considering suicide because he is so distressed by what happened to him. There's a really great quote here. I'm glad the wiki had it. I'm just gonna read it really quick. This is him describing his fears. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down in their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind, of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean floor shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium. And that is a lot to take away from his entire world being rocked by learning that there are other creatures on the sea floor.
Yeah.
And Also, at the end, just to wrap this up, and then we'll definitely get into some final thoughts. But
Yeah.
it's very unclear as to his mental state, but
Mm-hmm.
he seems to be under the impression that there is something at his door, something
Mm-hmm.
immense and something slippery coming to
Mm-hmm.
get him. And
Yep.
that gets into, I think it's this is really cool to see this theme set up in this story, because Dagon clearly doesn't care about this guy, doesn't chase after him as far as we know,
Mm-hmm.
but yet is still just haunting him. Just
Mm-hmm.
seeing Dagon drove this guy over the fucking edge.
Yep.
And that is so cool. But yeah, this is a really, I mean, we could gush all day. I love this one. This one's a classic. It is what it is, and
He thinks he sees Dagon's hand at the window too. I think at the end,
yeah,
because
he
he's gonna
does.
jump. He was going to jump from the window, and then he's like, "Oh my god, the window!" Because he thinks he sees something at the window. Yeah, that was a good way to end it. That was fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of it is open ended, and a lot of it isn't explained. But again, it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
It's about these moments that really stand out. It's the imagery. It's the themes of going insane and of learning something about the universe and just the earth itself that really puts this guy in his place and makes him question, and not only question mankind's place in the universe, but also question mankind's chances of survival. And that
Yeah.
is, that's a very, that's something that I'm sure is brought up in other stories, and we'll get to it. But no, it's a very good addition. But what do
Yeah.
you think? What do you think about the story overall?
I thoroughly enjoy Dagon. It's one of my favorite Lovecraft short stories. Um, you can tell this was when he was really, really starting to delve into his draw in on his fear and his perhaps just his wonder at the deep sea and everything that it contains. And because this is, I mean, I'm sure he drew inspiration from some giant squid washing up on the beach or whatever, but whatever it was, it just made him delve into this. And yeah, it's really well written. The character is succinct and intelligent, and you can tell that like he put a lot of thought, I guess, into this story. There's a lot of exploration in this story, a lot of like looking at our place in the universe and wondering like just how important are we really to the grand scheme of things. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of nihilism here buried in here. It seems like a lot of cosmic nihilism buried in these short stories.
Mm-hmm.
But I thoroughly enjoy it. It really makes you think about the limits of human perception, what we're able to perceive as reality and what is reality, and what the differences are between those two things. And yeah, makes you wonder, what if you're the crazy one, and what if what if the guy in this short story is actually the sane one and we're just the crazy ones?
Oh yeah,
Maybe we should be afraid.
yeah. It's again like I said near the beginning of the review. There's still a lot about the ocean that remains a mystery.
Yeah.
100 years on, and there's still a lot that people don't know, and it's like, well, there's always a chance. There's always a chance. This one is again, and I said earlier, I was surprised that this one was as early on as it was, but it makes sense now rereading it, because it is simple, But I do think that a lot of the themes are returned to in even grander ways. And
Mm-hmm.
this was a very necessary building block for making all of that possible. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we remember. I'm reading here that so the inspiration basically there was an editor of a press journal. He liked some of Lovecraft's juvenilia, and he
Mm-hmm.
encouraged him to keep writing. And that summer he wrote The Tomb and Dagon, which is a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good writing summer, honestly.
Yeah.
And yeah, so two very different stories, and this is going to be the story that ends up being the most narratively impactful on the rest of his stories.
Yeah.
But it's so cool because this really is the first one where we start to get these. They're not. It's not an otherworldly creature, but it's a creature. It's something.
Yeah.
It's something different than it's something beyond humanity. Whereas last time, yeah, we really liked the story, but it was a ghost story. I mean, like that was a staple. That's what everyone did
Yeah.
at the time and before.
Yeah.
So that was him doing his version of a ghost story. This was him doing his version of his own story.
Yeah, this was something new. That type of horror, like monster horror, outside of like, the Wolfman or Frankenstein, like you didn't see stuff like this, really.
And those creatures are not treated like this creature.
Right. They're not at all.
Not even close. Like
No.
just the sight, just this thing. This thing didn't attack him. That's what makes this so memorable. It doesn't even
Yeah.
look at him, and he goes
Yeah.
insane.
It has no, like, it doesn't, if it notices him, it doesn't care that he's there.
Yeah,
You know
because
what I
he's
mean?
just a man. Like, what's he gonna
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, no, that's another great theme. It's like these powers, like this is their world, and we're just living in it. This is why I brought up Godzilla in our last podcast, and why there was a lot of talk about bringing some of the Cthulhu mythos into like Godzilla or
Oh,
vice
yeah,
versa.
I can definitely
Um,
see the appeal of that, and
Yeah,
it's the way that people even in the trailer for the new Godzilla movie that's coming
yeah,
out this year, they make some comment like, oh, you would make Godzilla our pet, and Ken Watanabe says, no, we will be his, because that's very much the hierarchy, and
yeah,
that's how you make. Now, granted, Godzilla's kind of a protagonist to some degree in a lot
Yeah.
of those movies, but
yeah. That's
that-
true. Not
I-
always, though. Not always.
that's true. And I
There
would
are
bet
sometimes
that
it's not.
we discussed it last time, but I would bet that a lot of the more modern films took inspiration from something
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, oh, well, definitely. It's the whole force of nature theme that gets played on. It's very heavily drawn on in stories like this, and in franchises like the Godzilla franchise as well, because that's what he represents. He's a force of nature. He's not something that can be stopped. He's not something you can get rid of. You can only learn how to deal with it. You can only adapt at best. And that's like, even that's not necessarily always possible. So, yeah, this is one of those stories that really gets you thinking about like your place in the world, and just like it's a lot shorter, obviously, than The Tomb, but I think it's a much better written story in a lot of ways.
It's just, it is what it is. It knows what it is, and it gets to the point.
Yeah,
And it's just like, that can make for the most effective kind of story.
hmm
Because in a matter of pages, this guy's world is turned upside down.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that is the mark of good, building of the environment and of the character and of just the world, and making us invested enough to really want to know what happens next. But I think we'll leave this one at that. It's a classic, and I'm very glad that we got to it as early as we did.
Yeah, me too. It's a great story. It's one that I recommend to anybody, especially if you're new to the whole Lovecraft
Oh, this is a
mythos.
perfect first story.
Yes, this is an amazing place to start.
It's short, it's to the point, it gives you a good feel of what's to come, and you know the major narrative themes more so than the Tomb. The Tomb's a good story if you've read other stories.
Right,
You'll be
and
like,
the
okay,
Tomb's sort of a good story in its own right, off by itself. It's obviously not really a part. I wouldn't consider it a part of the mythos, but it's definitely a good story. But it meanders a bit. If I had to compare the two, I would definitely say I enjoy Dagon more.
I agree. This is wasn't my first, but it is a good first, and
Yeah,
this is where I think people would be most likely to get into it all. But with that, we're gonna say goodbye, and until next time, I am Reese,
I'm
and
Zach.
he's Zach. Yep, and we have been the Court of Azathoth, and we will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
See you later, everybody.